Hey guys, welcome back to another Q&A. It is June 6th, 2022. Today, we have a good mix of questions, actually. Some really good mix. So let's go ahead and dive right into those. Thoughts on consistent low-dose magnesium citrate use in the off-season for food motility? Hypothetically, yes, that would work. Obviously, motility is going to be at a premium when we're trying to move large amounts of food. I like that as a decent option. I generally will lean towards ginger root a little bit more. Seems to have a little bit less susceptibility to stomach upset. They say low dose. I'm not sure how low they're talking, but little less susceptibility to stomach upset and laxative type effect. At a low dose of mag citrate, it's probably not going to have that effect, but I would consider ginger first in most cases. Usually get like the 500 milligram caps, Now Foods, of the extract, and maybe start at 2 to 3 a day before meals and see how you do, and you can titrate that up a little bit. And I would try that route first. But yeah, I mean, motility is obviously going to be super important when food gets to a certain point. Where to buy quality probiotics? Local pharmacy, GNC, Amazon. Okay. First off, I'm not going to go into why you may or may not want to use a probiotic, because there are reasons for that. But let's say hypothetically you actually need one. The shipping process is going to be a big part of it. Storage and shipping process. Usually you can get quality probiotics from Amazon and online. I don't know about GNC, if they have what they offer, or certain supplement type shops. I'm sure some of them do offer the proper products. But really what you want to look for is usually, some of them are going to say shelf stable, and that's going to depend on the strands. That's going to depend on the durability, the encapsulation, and that. But for all intents and purposes, probably look for something that's cold shipped in general. Like this Biome brand, for example, Clear Labs, stuff like that, depending on where you're getting them from, cold shipped, usually going to be better. That's not an absolute. So look for that. Look for shelf stability based on the what it says on the packaging. It's going to depend on what the strands are and what you're using it for. But those are some things you're going to want to look for. I don't know about supplement stores if they're offering that type of thing. Online, you can order it that way, and they usually come like on dry ice. But that's what I would look for. Do you think if all other variables are constant, that low volume, high intensity workouts are more injurious? I don't know if that's a word. Might be. I don't know. Than higher volume, lower intensity workouts. I've never had off-season performance stall besides the year I worked volume up. With low volume, though, I pretty much get stronger until I get injured. Okay, so two things. It's probably going to be more like acute versus chronic. More volume is probably going to elicit more, well, I don't want to say that in absolute. More volume could potentially elicit more wear and tear just by repetition over lower volume. Potentially. But lower volume might raise the risk of acute injury, like literally getting injured in the session versus getting injured from you doing too much, if that makes sense. Hope that makes sense. I would say that there's probably not one or the other is probably not more injurious, as long as you're warmed up and you're functioning, you're able to move through the movement patterns properly, and neurologically everything's firing, and so on and so forth. So I'd say probably both have susceptibility to injury, just in different ways, if that makes sense. There's also, like with the lower volume, high intensity, think about your failure points and how you're operating. So are you maintaining, even when you're pushing those really nasty grinder reps, are you still maintaining form? Essentially, are you still maintaining proper movement pattern? Are you still maintaining tension on the target muscles, or has it shifted to other, assisting areas? Of course, it's going to do that to some extent. So, ask yourself some of those things. Depending on the movement, are you going to technical failure where the form breaks down, or literal mechanical failure where you can't move the weight anymore? Again, depends on the movements. What are you picking movement patterns that are going to be safer within the parameters of higher intensity, and kind of locking yourself in and bracing, etc. So I would say probably not more injurious necessarily in the long run, but maybe more susceptibility to acute injury type of episode, maybe. But there are, some factors. I'm sure it's been covered, but since insulin inhibits glucagon and GH actually stimulates the release of glucagon, should exogenous insulin and GH be dosed as far away from each other as possible. So many different protocols. Nah, I mean, with exogenous you're not going to matter. I mean, yes, there is going to be difference in glucagon in inhibition or stimulation, but you're using exogenous hormones. So, I mean, they're there. It doesn't really matter. I mean, it does matter, but it doesn't, because irregardless, you're basically canceling out that endogenous function in a way. Glucagon stimulation is going to be pretty much a null point when you introduce the GH. Now, let's say this is for muscle growth. I don't know if it is for muscle growth, right? So you're essentially looking for IGF release, whether that's hepatically, you're going to get some of that, or autocrine, paracrine, IGF. And then you're looking for control of that and resensitizing those pathways via insulin, right? So glucagon is kind of going to be a null point when you're controlling the blood glucose with the insulin. Probably won't really matter. Quickest way to gain symmetry if muscles on one side of your body are larger. My right lat, for example, is much larger than my left. Is it just as simple as doing more reps and sets on the smaller side? Yeah, I mean, it could be unilateral work, or a lot of it's just like being cognizant of the tension that you apply when you're doing bilateral movements, or when you're literally doing like holding a bar and you're using both hands at the same time versus unilateral. How do you apply that tension? Do you have movement imbalances that would cause you to contract one side better or differently than the other? Is your ability to contract your lat on your left side different, right? Is your ability to contract that different because of some type of shoulder issue or something, right? Are you right-handed? Maybe you are, since your right side's bigger. Are you, is it just like an overuse issue with that side because you do everything with it type of thing? So those would be the question. The questions I would ask first would be like, in terms of neurological function and movement, are you able to move both sides the same? And are you able to fire them the same? Because if you can do that, then you can start applying equal tension and you're going to get more even results, I guess, if you will. And then beyond that, yeah, you could apply unilateral work to that. Someone had white coat syndrome. Would you recommend a small dose of benzodiazepines before blood work for more valid results? I'm not going to recommend a pharmaceutical benzodiazepine before blood work. However, it seems like a lot. I mean, I get the premise of it. However, if you wanted to do, for example, some theanine, perhaps, I could see merit in that for sure. Or a supplement like Morphogen, Morphicom to really suppress that excitatory response. I could see merit in that for sure. I would be worried that using the pharmaceutical like that it's going to skew some of the markers, because it would skew certain things. So I'd be worried that it's going to give you a more even result because you're not freaking out when you're going in. But the white coat, I mean, that's really going to mostly affect like blood glucose potentially because of the cortisol and adrenaline release. And then of course, like cortisol levels. It's not really going to affect anything else on there. I mean, because most of that stuff is going to be more a product of a bigger picture, right? And not just 5 minutes of you freaking out, or 20 or 30 minutes. So those would be general suggestions. Can you build muscle while trying to recover from adrenal fatigue stage 2? I'm guessing that's what they're asking. Yeah, well, there's a lot of factors there. I mean, you're probably not training at a level that's going to be good for hypertrophy adaptation. Probably not. However, if you were in a really, really downregulated state before and you are able to train as much or more as you heal, you will get stronger. Then hypothetically, yes, you could build muscle in that situation. But that's only if you were like smashed to the bottom and then you just slowly get better as you heal. Otherwise, most cases, you're going to actually need to bring training and stimulus down while you heal. So chances are no, you're not going to build muscle. Could you look better? Potentially, like clearing inflammation, your body just being less stressed out and swollen, right? So you could certainly look better, but that, I don't know that your chances of building muscle would really depend on what your starting point was training wise, but probably not. How do you help clients push training intensity, especially when they've never trained till true failure before? Well, video could work. An example showing them, maybe, I mean, them videoing themselves or literally giving them an example of a video, having them understand to maintain this form and literally move until the weight doesn't move anymore and show them examples. I mean, I think that's outside of in person. That's probably one of the best things you can do, because them sending you a training video, yes, it's going to confirm that they're not there, but you giving them an example might help them get to that point, right? So I would prefer that way versus the other way around. Well documented in research to having test lowering effects. Is there something you see yourself in national clients' blood work? If so, is this a cause for concern in short cohorts? This is for metformin. So yeah, it will. It'd lower androgen production. Probably wouldn't use it in naturals if we're concerned about androgen production. If it's more of an anti-aging thing and you're really, the insulin sensitivity and androgen lowering effects are desirable in that situation, then sure. But if you're trying to build muscle and you're not as concerned about the benefits, then yeah, I wouldn't use it. Probably. As status as a PED, where do I stand on that? Yeah, I mean, in that situation, it's probably not going to blunt muscle growth to any significant degree, because we are going to be pushing most of those pathways via exogenous hormones. So probably not going to matter. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of my take. Probably not super desirable for a national athlete, because it will, I mean, literally in polycystic ovarian syndrome or hyperandrogenism, that's literally what it's used for, is to lower androgens. And it will do that to some extent, right? So I guess you need to ask, like, why you're using it in the natural client, because it might be fine. Like if they're not going for a big muscle growth goal and it's a longevity type of thing, they just want to get healthier and improve health parameters and stuff, yeah, that's probably going to help, as long as their hormones are at a good enough spot that they can afford to come down a smidge. So keep that in mind. Enhanced client, I mean, you're going to hear different opinions, but I don't get concerned about it. So, okay. Hope everyone has a great rest of your day and enjoyed the Q&A, and we'll talk to you next time.